But
crime. And even today,
wouldn't you want to hear from the guy? Wouldn't you want to hear right from the horse's mouth?
I think the president has much bigger issues to deal with, and even today, President Bill Clinton said that he believes the president.
Bigger issues than being implicated in a pedophile ring?
We started the show talking about the Epstein files.
I think
it's interesting that we're now diverting away from the facts on local Democrats letting criminals out of prison who are then going and murdering people at bus stops and on the train on the way home. But I want to get to this.
I think it's a pretty big issue when you have the sitting president of the and frankly, if the president was a Democrat and he was implicated in the biggest sex trafficking ring in the United States, in the history of this country,
I think the word implicated is pretty strong, and I think
how would you know? But how would you know if he doesn't testify?
Because you can read the documents, you can read the emails, and this isn't just about President Trump.
But we have 3 million documents that haven't been released.
Yes, you can. The Epstein thing is a distraction.
Have you ever noticed how some political interviews stop being interviews and turn into a battle over who controls the conversation? That's exactly what happened here. What started as a debate about crime quickly became a showdown over transparency, accountability, and one question that refused to go away. I'm not going to ask you to like, comment, or subscribe just yet. I want to earn it. If this story moves you, surprises you, or stays with you long after it's over, then show your support at the end. Trust me, you'll have a reason to. Now, let's begin. Katie Pavlich appeared ready to keep the discussion focused on crime and immigration, but Brian Tyler Cohen had a different plan. Instead of following that script, he repeatedly brought the conversation back to the Epstein files, forcing the interview into an entirely different direction. From that moment on, this stopped being a routine political debate and became a test of how each side handled uncomfortable questions. And then came the exchange that changed everything.
So why does it seem like blue states are putting criminals ahead of law-abiding citizens and putting people at risk? Joining me now is progressive YouTuber Brian Tyler Cohen. Brian, great to see you tonight. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
There is a pattern of the soft-on-crime policies in blue cities and states putting career criminals ahead of citizens, and now we have deadly results. Do you think that they should be harsher on these types of criminals, or should they continue letting them out of prison?
If you're talking about criminals who commit violent crimes, undocumented immigrants or immigrants who commit violent crimes, should they be deported? Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that is a perfect example of when you and I are probably in full agreement that I want as harsh a penalty as you can get. If somebody commits a sexual crime, a crime against a child, or a violent crime, those are the people who shouldn't be here. But I think it's interesting that you highlighted a sex offender who's running for office, and I agree, or I presume I agree that we both don't think that somebody like that should be representing Americans. And so I guess my question to you would be, given the fact that Trump himself is named in the Epstein files 38,000 times, do you think he should at least testify in the same way that Bill and Hillary Clinton did?
There are multiple people who have testified already in these depositions who have said that the president is not implicated in any kind of crime. And even today,
wouldn't you want to hear from the guy? Wouldn't you want to hear right from the horse's mouth?
I think the president has much bigger issues to deal with, and even today, President Bill Clinton said that he believes the president.
Bigger issues than being implicated in a pedophile ring?
We started the show talking about the Epstein files. I think it's interesting that we're now diverting away from the facts on local Democrats letting criminals out of prison who are then going and murdering people at bus stops and on the train on the way home. But I want to get to this.
I think it's a pretty big issue when you have the sitting president of the and frankly, if the president was a Democrat and he was implicated in the biggest sex trafficking ring in the United States, in the history of this country,
I think the word implicated is pretty strong, and I think
how would you know? But how would you know if he doesn't testify?
Because you can read the documents, you can read the emails, and this isn't just about President Trump.
But we have 3 million documents that haven't been released.
Yes, you can. The Epstein thing is a distraction. From what's actually happening from this story that happened just today, where we have an illegal immigrant from West Africa.
You brought up the idea of a registered sex offender.
Yeah, registered convicted sex offender, not the president who was named in files with no evidence at all of criminal wrongdoing. Those are 2 very different things. But I want to get back to the news.
Transparency. Why wouldn't you want some transparency?
There's been plenty of transparency, which is why President Trump signed the legislation to put out the documents.
Do you support the James Comer precedent
has much more
of bringing
important
presidents
issues
in front of the?
Look, we're completely off base here talking about the Epstein files. I want to ask you this question about what happened in Fairfax County just tonight. We now know that this man was here illegally. He has 30 different arrests, criminal history for rape and malicious wounding. One of the first things that the new Democratic governor of Virginia did, Abigail Spanberger, was cut off cooperation with ICE to turn over violent criminals like this to the federal government so they can be deported. Do you believe that she should cooperate with ICE to get this guy out of the country and to prosecute him so that additional people are not harmed if he's released onto the streets?
I have no problem with ICE cooperating with state governments for violent criminals. I don't agree that states should be cooperating with ICE in instances where it doesn't involve violent criminals.
Even if they have 30 different arrests for rape and malicious wounding?
Well, that sounds like those sound like violent instances. So you have my answer on that. So I think we're in agreement there. I think if somebody is a violent criminal, then that's the instance where I think it would be acceptable to cooperate with ICE.
I want to ask you about this. There's new research by Vanderbilt University and Wellesley College saying that when Republican prosecutors are elected, the mortality among young men aged 20 to 29 falls by 6.6%. So do those numbers mean anything to you in terms of reducing crime and the approach that Democrats take to criminals versus Republicans?
No, I'm sorry. I don't really understand what that means.
It means that Republican candidates who are elected as prosecutors, they prosecute criminals and they keep them in prison, unlike in jail. Unlike Democrats, like in Fairfax County, for example, this prosecutor has let out a number of violent criminals back on the streets who then went on to reoffend or murder people. So the difference is that there are more living human beings in these communities as a result of putting violent criminals behind bars rather than releasing them into the community. Should Democrats take a harder stance on crime?
I think for violent criminals, there should be a harsh stance anyway. I'm fully in support of that. Look, I live in Los Angeles, but I mean, you can make blanket statements.
It's not a blanket statement. There's tons of data and examples.
We have in my city of Los Angeles, we had George Gascon, who was voted out in deference to Nathan Hochman, and so that's it. I mean, this is a true blue liberal bastion, and people here have spoken.
I'm glad we can agree on that. We look forward to having you back next time we're out of town. Brian Tyler Cohen, thank you so much for coming and debating me.
After watching that exchange, one thing becomes clear. This wasn't just a disagreement over immigration policy or the Epstein files. It became a debate over something much broader: how political figures and media personalities decide which questions deserve attention and which ones can be set aside. Throughout the interview, Brian Tyler Cohen repeatedly returned to the issue of transparency, arguing that public officials should be willing to answer difficult questions directly. Katie Pavlich, meanwhile, kept steering the conversation back toward violent crime and immigration, maintaining that those were the more urgent issues facing the country. Neither side abandoned its position, and that contrast ultimately defined the entire debate. Whether you agree with Brian, Katie, or neither, moments like these remind us why political interviews matter. They don't just reveal policy differences, they also reveal how people frame issues, respond under pressure, and decide what deserves the public's attention. As for the broader questions surrounding the Epstein files and other public controversies, those continue to generate intense debate across the political spectrum. Different people draw different conclusions, and ongoing public discussion, reporting, and official processes continue to shape that conversation. But now the question goes to you. Who made the stronger case in this interview? Did Brian Tyler Cohen successfully keep the focus on transparency, or do you think Katie Pavlich was right to redirect the conversation toward crime and public safety? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more in-depth analysis of the biggest political debates making headlines around the world, don't forget to subscribe to The Political Room. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.